By the way, I'm only visible to the extent that I am in the United States today, despite my interest in Marx, not because of it. I get the attention I do because of my pedigree, because this country is very organized that way, which I assume you know.
Yeah,
So
same. Virgil, too, even though he doesn't like to talk about it.
Yes, but it's very rigid that way, and it always has been. Anyway, finish my story. The jobs left, either replaced by machines or replaced by export of jobs. And the American working class suddenly discovered the contingency of the well-being that they had enjoyed for a century. Suddenly, it became clear to some of us that it was always contingent. Things had worked out real well, luckily, but it was over now. But of course, to explain that to people would be to take away the fantasy of American exceptionalism. The fantasy that it's built in, that it's somehow something you personally can achieve if only you play by the rules and you work hard. And that was impossible in American culture. Just impossible. So in fact, we have the double whammy. A working class that expected to have a rising standard of living now no longer gets the wages to pay for it. But the double whammy, they can't discuss it. My wife is a psychotherapist, and one of the things she deals with is childhood sexual trauma. And what she taught me was it's awful to be the victim of that. But it is doubly awful if you are the victim and you can't talk about it with anybody. That for all the usual reasons, your relatives or your parents or minister or whatever can't figure out a way to access this in you, and you therefore can access it. So that's what we have. American working class traumatized by the end of its rising wages and the inability for any politician, any academician, anyone to enable a public discourse. What are we going to do now that our good times are over? So what Americans did, very sad, was react individually to what was a social and economic problem. And there's a little rule in life, at least that I've learned. You want to solve a social problem, you need a social movement. Trying to solve a social problem with your little individual action, that's a very sad undertaking with a very bad ending. So what did American workers do? They worked more hours. You watch after 1970, that's when everybody gets a second job, a third job. The teenagers work on the weekends. The old people become greeters at Walmart. You know the story. We live in it. And the other thing the American working class did, tragic, was to become pioneers in a new way. The American working class borrowed more money than any working class ever in the history of the world, in any country, borrowed, and is now drowning mortgage debt, auto debt, credit card debt, student debt. It's ridiculous, it's overwhelming, and it is totally socially destructive.